A widow trapped. Violent men closing in. One rancher's arrival changes everything. In 1881 Kansas Territory, Evelyn Moore faced her final moment, cornered in her own home by debt collectors who'd come to take more than money. Her husband was 6 months dead. Her land, sold. Her options, gone. When fists replaced words and terror replaced hope, a silent rancher named Samuel Reed rode through her broken gate. He didn't ask questions. He didn't negotiate. He simply stood between her and violence, and in that moment, everything changed. Stay with me until the end of this story. Hit that like button and comment your city so I can see how far this tale has traveled. The wind came hard across the Kansas plains that October afternoon, carrying with it the smell of dying grass and the promise of early winter. Evelyn Moore stood at the cracked window of her farmhouse, watching 3 riders approach through the golden haze of late autumn light. Her hands, raw from washing laundry in cold water, gripped the windowsill until her knuckles went white. She knew who they were. She'd known they would come. The farmhouse behind her told its own story of collapse, peeling wallpaper that had once been cream-colored with tiny blue flowers, now curled and brown at the edges, floorboards that groaned with every step, a kitchen table with one leg shorter than the others, propped up with a folded newspaper from 3 months ago, back when Thomas was still alive and everything, though difficult, still made a kind of sense. Thomas Moore had been a dreamer. He'd bought this land with borrowed money and bigger promises, convinced that Kansas Territory would yield fortune to anyone willing to work hard enough. He'd planted crops in soil that fought back. He'd built fences that the wind knocked down. He'd made deals with men whose smiles hid knives, and when the drought came, as it always seemed to in this unforgiving place, those deals came due. Then Thomas fell from the barn roof while trying to patch a hole. A simple fall. A broken neck. Gone in an instant, leaving Evelyn with a 6-month-old grave, a mortgage she couldn't read properly, and debts that multiplied like locusts in summer. The riders dismounted. Evelyn counted their steps to her door, 12 heavy thuds against packed earth. She'd sold everything she could. The good plow, Thomas's watch, her mother's silver candlesticks that had crossed an ocean in a trunk. The land itself had gone to the bank 3 weeks ago. She had nothing left but the clothes she wore and the stubborn refusal to leave this house before she was forced to. The knock came hard. 3 times. Not a request, a demand. Evelyn's hands trembled as she smoothed her dress, a faded gray thing that had been black when she'd worn it to bury her husband. She'd turned it once already, using the good fabric from the inside to patch the worn outside. It wouldn't turn again. She opened the door 6 inches, keeping her boot wedged behind it. The man in front was named Cyrus Holt. She'd seen him twice before. Once when he'd come with papers Thomas had signed. Once when he'd come to take the plow. He was thick-shouldered and red-faced, with eyes that never quite met hers directly, but instead roamed across her face and body like she was property. He was appraising. "Mrs. Moore." His voice carried false politeness, the kind men used when they wanted to seem reasonable before they stopped being reasonable. "You know why we're here?" The land is sold," Evelyn said, keeping her voice steady though her heart hammered against her ribs. "You have everything." "Not everything." Cyrus pulled a folded paper from his coat pocket. "Your husband signed a personal note, $500, due September 1st. It's now October 23rd. With interest, you're at $640. The number hit her like a physical blow. $640. She couldn't earn that in 5 years of work, even if someone would hire her. "I don't have it," she said simply. "I can't pay what doesn't exist." Cyrus smiled, but it never reached his eyes. "Well now, that's a problem, isn't it? Because a debt is a debt, Mrs. Moore. Your husband made promises in his name. You carry that name. That makes it your problem." The law says a lot of things," Cyrus interrupted, "but we're a long way from any courthouse, and you're a woman alone with no one to speak for you. So let's talk about practical matters." The 2 men behind him moved closer. One was younger, maybe 20, with a thin mustache he clearly thought made him look older. The other was older, weathered, with a scar that ran from his eyebrow into his hairline. Neither spoke, but their presence said enough. "I have nothing to give you," Evelyn repeated. Her throat felt tight. "Take the house if the bank hasn't claimed it already. I'll leave today." The house is worth maybe $100, and that's being generous. Cyrus stepped closer, forcing Evelyn back. The door swung open. But there are other ways a debt can be settled. You're a young woman, healthy. There are mining camps north of here, places where a woman with your qualities could work off what's owed. The words took a moment to register. When they did, ice flooded Evelyn's veins. No. The word came out stronger than she felt. Absolutely not. It's not really a question, Mrs. Moore. Cyrus was inside now, the other two following. The younger one closed the door behind them. You see, your husband thought he could make promises and walk away from them. He did walk away, right into a grave. But promises don't die just because a man does. Someone has to pay. And right now, that someone is you. Evelyn backed toward the kitchen, her mind racing. The house had no back door. Thomas had never gotten around to adding one. The windows were small, too small to climb through quickly. There was a knife in the kitchen drawer, but she was 3 steps away, and they were between her and it. There's a man named Sullivan who runs a camp near Dodge City, Cyrus continued, walking slowly toward her like he had all the time in the world. He pays good money for women willing to work. You work 3 years, maybe 4, your debt is cleared, you walk away free. That's not work, that's slavery. Call it what you want. Point is, you've got a choice. Come with us peaceable, work off what's owed, or we take you anyway and add resisting to your debt. Either way, you're coming. The younger man laughed, a nervous, cruel sound. Might be she needs convincing, Cy. Might be, Cyrus agreed. Evelyn's back hit the kitchen wall. Her hand reached sideways, fingers searching for the drawer handle. The older man with the scar moved left, cutting off her angle. Don't make this harder than it needs to be, Cyrus said. His voice had lost its false pleasantness. Now it was just flat. Matter of fact. The voice of a man who'd done this before and would do it again. You're coming with us. How you come is up to you. He reached for her arm. Evelyn grabbed the drawer and yanked it open. Her hand closed around the knife handle, but the scarred man was faster. He caught her wrist and twisted. The knife clattered to the floor. Pain shot up her arm. Feisty, the younger one said. I like that. Shut up, Cyrus snapped. He grabbed Evelyn's other arm. Mrs. Moore, you're making a mistake. Let me go. Evelyn tried to pull away, but his grip was iron. The scarred man still had her wrist, twisting just enough that she had to bend to avoid more pain. This is illegal. You can't what? Cyrus pulled her close, his breath hot on her face. Can't collect a legitimate debt? Can't take collateral? You signed papers, Mrs. Moore. You might not remember it, but your name is on the same documents as your husband's. Joint debt, joint responsibility. I never signed anything. Your word against mine, and I have paper that says different. He started dragging her toward the door. Now we can do this easy, or we can do this hard. Your choice. Evelyn drove her knee up, aiming for where she hoped it would hurt most. She connected, and Cyrus grunted, his grip loosening. She wrenched free and ran, not toward the door, but toward the front window. If she could break it, if she could scream loud enough, maybe someone... The younger man caught her around the waist, lifting her off her feet. She kicked backward, her heel connecting with his shin. He swore, but held on. Enough! Cyrus's voice was a roar. He'd recovered, his face purple with rage. We tried being nice. You want to fight? Fine. We'll do it your way. He nodded to the scarred man who moved toward Evelyn with purpose. She saw his fist coming but couldn't avoid it. The blow caught her across the cheek, and her vision exploded into stars. The younger man dropped her, and she hit the floor hard, tasting blood. Pick her up, Cyrus ordered. We'll deal with her attitude on the road. Through the ringing in her ears, Evelyn heard them moving. Hands grabbed her arms. She tried to resist, but her body wouldn't cooperate. Everything felt distant and strange, like she was watching it happen to someone else. This is how I die, she thought distantly. Not here, but somewhere north, in a camp where no one knows my name. Then she heard it, the sound of hoofbeats, fast, getting closer. The hands on her arms loosened. Through her swimming vision, she saw Cyrus move to the window. Who the hell is that? Don't know, the scarred man said. Coming fast, though. One rider. We can handle one rider. But Cyrus's voice had changed. He didn't sound certain anymore. The hoofbeats stopped. Evelyn heard boots on the porch steps, slow, deliberate. Whoever had arrived wasn't in a hurry. The door, which the younger man had closed, swung open. Evelyn, still on the floor with blood running from her lip, turned her head to see. The man in the doorway was tall, maybe 6 feet, with broad shoulders that filled the frame. He wore a dark coat dusted with trail dirt and a hat that shadowed his face. His boots were worn but well kept. At his hip hung a gun, not displayed for show, but there, practical, present. He didn't speak immediately. He simply stood there, his gaze moving across the scene, Evelyn on the floor, blood on her face. The 3 men frozen in various positions of aggression, the overturned chair, the knife on the ground. When he finally spoke, his voice was quiet, almost conversational, but it carried a weight that filled the room. "Ma'am, are you hurt badly?" Evelyn tried to speak, but her voice wouldn't come. She managed to shake her head slightly. The man's gaze shifted to Cyrus. "You need to leave." Cyrus straightened, trying to reclaim authority. "This is private business, none of your concern." "I'm making it my concern." The man's voice didn't rise. It didn't need to. "The lady is hurt. You're leaving. Those 2 things are happening right now." "Now wait just a minute," Cyrus started. The man took 1 step into the room, just one, but something in the movement made all 3 men back up. "I don't know who you think you are," Cyrus tried again, but his voice had lost its certainty. "But this woman owes a debt, a legal debt. We have every right." "You have the right to leave," the man interrupted. "And you have about 10 seconds to start doing it." The scarred man's hand drifted toward his belt. The newcomer's eyes tracked the movement. "Don't," he said softly. "Please don't." Something in those 2 words made the scarred man freeze. It wasn't a threat. It was almost a request. But underneath it lay something else. A certainty. A readiness. The man was hoping they wouldn't fight, but he was absolutely prepared if they did. Cyrus looked at his 2 companions. Some silent communication passed between them. The younger one edged toward the door. The scarred man followed. "This isn't over," Cyrus said, trying to save face. "The debt is real. The law, the man said quietly, says you can't beat a woman and force her into slavery. So if you want to talk about the law, we can ride into town right now and have that conversation in front of the marshal. Your choice." Cyrus's face went red, then white. She owes you nothing that justifies this. Now get out." For a long moment, no one moved. Then Cyrus jerked his head toward the door, and the 3 men filed out. From the floor, Evelyn heard them mount their horses. Heard Cyrus say something she couldn't make out. Heard the horses move off at a trot, then a gallop. Then silence. The man closed the door quietly. He crossed the room and knelt beside Evelyn, moving slowly enough that she wouldn't be frightened. "Can you sit up?" he asked. Evelyn nodded and let him help her into a sitting position, her back against the wall. The room tilted for a moment, then steadied. She touched her lip gingerly. It was split, but not too badly. The man stood and moved to the kitchen. She heard water being pumped, the sound of a cloth being dampened. He returned and handed it to her. "For your face," he said. Evelyn took it with shaking hands and pressed it to her mouth. The cool wetness helped. So did having something to do with her hands. "Thank you," she managed. Her voice came out hoarse. I don't know what would have happened if you hadn't." "Don't think about it," he said. He settled into a crouch nearby, not crowding her but close enough to help if she needed it. "Are you hurt anywhere else?" She shook her head. "Just my face. And my wrist." She looked at it, already bruising where the scarred man had twisted it. The man's jaw tightened slightly, but he only nodded. "It'll heal. Nothing broken." They sat in silence for a moment. Evelyn studied him more carefully now. He looked to be in his mid-30s with dark hair that needed cutting and a face that was weathered but not harsh. His eyes were gray, she noticed, steady. He had the look of a man who spent most of his time outdoors, sun lines at the corners of his eyes, hands that were calloused and strong. "I'm Samuel Reed," he said finally. "I have a ranch about 12 miles west of here. I was passing through, saw the horses, thought I should check." "Evelyn Moore." She lowered the cloth from her face. "This is my house." Was my house. The bank owns it now, I suppose. Samuel's gaze moved around the room, taking in the evidence of hardship. Your husband? Dead, 6 months ago. The words came out flat. She'd said them so many times they'd lost their emotional weight. He left debts. Those men, they say I have to pay them. What they wanted wasn't payment. That was kidnapping. The law sees debt different when you're a woman. Evelyn pulled herself up straighter, wincing at the various pains making themselves known. I signed papers when I married Thomas, took his name. His debts became mine. Debt doesn't give a man the right to beat you. Tell that to them. Samuel stood slowly and walked to the window, looking out at the empty road. They'll come back, he said. Maybe not today, maybe not tomorrow. But men like that don't give up when they think they're owed something. I know. Evelyn felt suddenly exhausted, like all the fear and adrenaline of the last hour had drained out at once, leaving her hollow. I'll leave. Tonight. I'll go to Topeka, or maybe east. Find work somewhere. They can't collect from someone they can't find. Samuel turned back to her. You have money for that? For travel? For food? Until you find work? Evelyn looked away. The answer was obvious. How much is the debt? Samuel asked. $640. She laughed, but it came out bitter. Might as well be $6,000. I don't have anything. They took the land, the equipment. I sold everything else. Samuel was quiet for a long moment, his expression thoughtful. What if you didn't run? I don't have a choice. There's always a choice. He moved back toward her, then seemed to think better of it, and leaned against the doorframe instead, giving her space. What if you had a place to go, somewhere safe, somewhere they couldn't touch you? Evelyn looked at him warily. I don't understand. My ranch, Samuel said. I need help. Someone to cook, clean, help with the house. My daughter is 7. She needs a woman's presence. You're offering me work? I'm offering you shelter, safety. The work would just be part of it. It was too good, too convenient. Evelyn had learned the hard way that when something seemed too good, it usually was. What would you want in return? She asked carefully. Beyond the work, I mean. Samuel's expression didn't change. Nothing beyond the work. You'd have your own room, your own space. I'm not offering anything improper if that's your concern. Men always say that. Some men do. He met her eyes steadily. I'm telling you the truth. My wife died 2 years ago. I'm raising my daughter alone, and I'm doing a poor job of it. The house is falling apart. I can't cook worth a damn. And Mila, my daughter, she needs someone who can teach her things I can't. Why me? You don't know me. I know you fought 3 men to stay free, Samuel said quietly. I know you're still in this house when most people would have run weeks ago. That tells me what I need to know. Evelyn wanted to believe him, desperately. But trust was expensive, and she'd paid too much for it already. If I say yes, she said slowly, and those men come looking for me, they'll find a rancher who doesn't take kindly to threats. Samuel's voice remained calm, but something in it hardened. They'll find out that some debts aren't collectible, and they'll leave empty-handed. You can't promise that. No, he agreed, but I can try, which is more than you have right now. He was right. Evelyn hated that he was right, but he was. She had no money, no friends close enough to help, no family left alive. She could run, but they'd find her eventually. Women alone were easy to track, easy to corner. Or she could go with this stranger, this Samuel Reed, and hope he was telling the truth about his intentions. It was a terrible choice, but terrible choices were all she had left. Why? She asked. Why would you risk trouble with those men for someone you don't know? Samuel was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice was softer. Because 2 years ago, my wife was sick, real sick, and I wasn't there. I was out trying to save the ranch, making deals, working myself into the ground. When I finally got home, she was gone, and I never got to tell her. He stopped, his jaw working. I wasn't there when she needed me most. Maybe I can't fix that, but I can be here now, for someone who needs help. It was the most honest thing anyone had said to Evelyn in months. maybe years. She looked around this farmhouse one last time, at the peeling wallpaper, the crooked table, the water-stained ceiling where rain had leaked through last spring. Thomas's dream had died here. Her old life had died here. Maybe it was time to let it go. "All right," she said. "I'll come with you. But if I turn out to be lying, you leave," Samuel said. "No questions asked. I'll take you to town myself if that's what you want." Evelyn nodded slowly. "Then, yes, I'll come." Samuel pushed off from the doorframe. "Do you have things to pack?" "Not much." She stood carefully, testing her balance. Her face throbbed, and her wrist ached, but she could move. "I can be ready in 10 minutes. Take your time. I'll get your bag onto my horse." Evelyn moved through the house one last time, gathering what little she owned. 2 dresses besides the one she wore. Her mother's Bible. Not because she read it much anymore, but because it had her family names written in the front. A small box with Thomas's wedding ring and a tintype of him from before they'd married, when he'd still been young and full of hope. A hairbrush with 3 teeth missing. It all fit in a canvas bag that had once held flour. She paused at the door, looking back. This had been her home for 3 years. It had been full of dreams once, then full of struggle, then full of loss. Now it was just empty. "Goodbye," she whispered. To the house. To Thomas. To everything that had been. Then she stepped outside into the October afternoon, pulled the door shut behind her, and didn't look back. Samuel was waiting with his horse, a solid bay gelding that stood patiently while he secured her bag behind the saddle. He looked up as she approached. "Ready?" Evelyn nodded. "It's about 2 hours' ride," he said. "We can take it slow if you're hurting." "I'm fine." It was a lie, but a necessary one. She'd learned to be fine even when she wasn't. Samuel swung into the saddle, then reached down. "Give me your hand." Evelyn hesitated, then took it. His grip was warm and calloused and strong. He pulled her up behind him in one smooth motion. She settled awkwardly, not sure where to put her hands. "Hold on to me," Samuel said. "It's rough country. I don't want you falling." Evelyn gripped his coat tentatively. As the horse started moving, she tightened her hold. They rode west into the lowering sun. Behind them, the farmhouse grew smaller and smaller until it disappeared into the plains. Ahead, the land stretched endlessly, brown grass rippling in the wind, scattered trees marking distant creek beds, the vast Kansas sky turning gold and orange and purple as evening approached. Neither of them spoke. There was too much to say and no good way to say it. But as they rode, Evelyn felt something unexpected, a tiny spark of something she'd thought was dead. Not hope, exactly. Hope was too fragile, too easily destroyed. But maybe possibility. Maybe the chance that tomorrow might be different from today. And for now, broken and battered and running from men who wanted to own her, that was enough. The sun touched the horizon, painting the world in fire. Samuel's horse moved steadily westward, carrying them both toward whatever came next. Behind them, Evelyn's old life faded into gathering darkness. Ahead, something unknown waited. She held on tighter and tried not to be afraid. The Reed Ranch appeared as darkness settled fully over the plains, first as a cluster of lights in the distance, then gradually resolving into shapes. A main house, a barn, a few outbuildings scattered across what looked like several acres of fenced land. It wasn't grand, but it was solid. Real. More than Evelyn had expected. Samuel slowed the horse as they approached, and Evelyn felt him shift slightly in the saddle. "That's home," he said quietly. The house itself was a single-story structure built from local stone and timber, with a wide porch that wrapped around the front and one side. Smoke rose from the chimney, which meant someone had kept the fire going. Light glowed in 2 windows, warm and yellow against the night. Samuel dismounted first, then helped Evelyn down. Her legs trembled when her feet touched the ground. Whether from the ride, the day's violence, or simple exhaustion, she couldn't say. She steadied herself against the horse's flank while Samuel retrieved her bag. The front door opened before they reached it. A small figure stood silhouetted in the doorway, backlit by the fire inside. "Papa?" The voice was young, uncertain. "I'm here, Mila." Samuel's voice changed when he spoke to his daughter, softened somehow, though it had never been hard. Sorry I was gone longer than expected. The girl came down the porch steps, and as she moved into the light spilling from the door, Evelyn got her first good look at Samuel's daughter. She was small for 7, with dark hair braided loosely down her back and eyes that matched her father's gray. She wore a simple dress that looked a size too big, and her feet were bare despite the evening chill. Mila stopped when she saw Evelyn, her eyes going wide. "Who's that?" "This is Mrs. Moore," Samuel said. "She's going to be staying with us for a while, helping around the house." "Why?" Mila's directness reminded Evelyn of how children spoke before the world taught them to be polite. "Because I asked her to." Samuel set Evelyn's bag on the porch. "Mila, can you show Mrs. Moore where she can wash up? I need to put the horse away." Mila studied Evelyn with open curiosity, her gaze catching on the bruise forming on Evelyn's cheek, the split lip. "Did you get hurt?" "I had an accident," Evelyn said, which was easier than the truth. "Does it hurt?" "A little." Mila nodded solemnly, as if this made perfect sense. Then she turned and walked back into the house, clearly expecting Evelyn to follow. Samuel caught Evelyn's eye. "There's a room off the kitchen. It's small, but it's private. Get yourself settled. I'll be in shortly." Evelyn climbed the porch steps and entered the house. The interior was exactly what she'd expected from a widower raising a child alone, functional but neglected. The main room served as both sitting area and dining space, with a stone fireplace dominating one wall. A table that could seat 6 stood near the kitchen area, though only 2 chairs were pulled up to it. The furniture was good quality, but dusty. Dishes were stacked in the kitchen basin. The floor needed sweeping. But it was warm, and it was clean enough. And most importantly, it felt safe. Mila led her through the kitchen to a small room that had probably been meant for storage. It held a narrow bed, a small dresser, and a window that looked out toward the barn. Someone, Samuel probably, had made up the bed with quilts and left a lamp on the dresser. "This is where Mama used to sew," Mila said, standing in the doorway. "Before she got sick." Evelyn set her bag on the bed. "It's a nice room. Thank you for showing me." Mila lingered, clearly wanting to say something but not sure how. Finally she asked, "Are you going to leave like Mama did?" The question hit Evelyn like a physical blow. She turned to look at the child, seeing the worry barely hidden behind the direct gaze. "I'm not planning to," Evelyn said carefully. "But your Mama didn't leave on purpose, did she? She got sick." "She got sick, and then she went away and didn't come back." Mila's voice was matter-of-fact, but her hands twisted in her dress. "Papa says she's in heaven now, but I don't know where that is." Evelyn knelt down, ignoring the protest from her sore wrist. "Heaven it's a place people talk about when someone dies, a good place, where people don't hurt anymore." "Do you believe in it?" It was the kind of question adults learned not to ask, but children still did. Evelyn thought about Thomas, about her parents, about all the people she'd lost. Did she believe in heaven? She honestly didn't know anymore. "I believe your Mama loved you very much," she said instead, "and that love doesn't go away, even when people do." Mila considered this, then nodded. "Papa says that too." She turned to leave, then paused. "There's water in the kitchen if you want to wash. And bread if you're hungry. Papa's not very good at cooking, but he tries." Then she was gone, her bare feet padding softly across the floor. Evelyn stood slowly and looked around her new room. It was small, yes, but it had a door that closed, a window with a latch, a bed that looked more comfortable than anything she'd slept on in years. After the farmhouse with its leaking roof and broken furniture, this felt almost luxurious. She moved to the kitchen and found the water pump, filling a basin carefully. The water was cold but clean. She dampened a cloth and cleaned her face properly, wincing as she touched the bruise. In a small mirror hung by the window, she examined the damage. Her lip was swollen, her cheek already turning purple. She looked like what she was, a woman who'd been beaten. The thought made anger flare, hot and sudden. Those men had put their hands on her, had planned to drag her away and sell her like livestock. And for what? A debt she'd never agreed to, signed on papers she'd barely understood? The anger felt good. Better than fear. Better than helplessness. She heard the front door open and Samuel's boots on the floor. Quickly she smoothed her hair and dried her face, then returned to the main room. Samuel was crouched by the fireplace, adding wood. Mila sat at the table, watching him. Both looked up when Evelyn entered. "Feel better?" Samuel asked. "Yes, thank you." He stood, dusting his hands. "I know it's late, but have you eaten? There's stew from yesterday. It's not much, but I can warm it," Evelyn said before thinking, then caught herself. "I mean, if that's all right, if that's what you'd like me to do." Samuel studied her for a moment. "You don't have to start working tonight. You've had a rough day." "I'd rather keep busy." It was true. Busy meant not thinking. Not thinking meant not remembering those men's hands on her, their intentions. Samuel nodded slowly. "All right. Pot's in the kitchen. Stew's in the cold box out back." Evelyn found everything where he'd said. The cold box was a simple wooden structure built into the north side of the house, packed with straw for insulation. The stew pot was heavy cast iron, well used but clean. She carried it inside and set it over the fire, adding wood to build up the heat. Mila appeared at her elbow. "Can I help? Do you know where the bowls are?" Mila nodded and retrieved 3 bowls from the cupboard, along with spoons. She set them on the table with the careful precision of a child performing an important task. Samuel watched from his chair, saying nothing, but Evelyn caught the expression on his face. Something between surprise and relief. The stew warmed slowly. Evelyn stirred it, testing the temperature, adjusting the heat. It was simple fare: venison, potatoes, carrots, onions, but it smelled good. Samuel might claim he couldn't cook, but whoever had made this knew what they were doing. "Did you make this?" she asked. "Sarah, neighbor woman, brought it over yesterday." Samuel stood and moved to the kitchen. "She tries to help, but she's got 6 of her own to feed. Can't expect her to keep feeding us too." "It's good of her to try. People around here help each other when they can." He paused. "Those men earlier, they weren't from around here. I'd remember seeing them. They said they were collecting for someone." Evelyn kept her eyes on the pot. "Someone my husband owed money to." "Did your husband have dealings with mining camps? Loan operations?" "I don't know. Thomas he didn't tell me about his business." She heard the bitterness in her own voice and tried to soften it. "He meant well. He just wasn't good at planning." Samuel made a sound that might have been agreement. "Well, if they come around here, they'll find planning isn't their strength either." The stew was ready. Evelyn ladled it into bowls, serving Mila first, then Samuel, then herself. They ate at the table, the only sounds the clink of spoons and the crackle of the fire. Mila finished first and looked at her father. "Can I be excused?" "Go on." Samuel watched her scamper off toward what was presumably her bedroom, then turned to Evelyn. "She likes you. She doesn't know me. She knows you served her first. That matters to children." He set down his spoon. "Look, I want to be clear about something. You're here because I offered you work and shelter. That's the arrangement. But if those men come looking, if there's trouble, you're not obligated to stay. I won't hold it against you if you decide to leave." "Where would I go?" "East, like you said. I could give you money for travel, help you get started somewhere else." Evelyn met his eyes. "Why would you do that? You barely know me." "Because it's the right thing to do." Samuel pushed his bowl away. "And because I know what it's like to feel trapped. When Elizabeth, my wife, got sick, we couldn't afford the doctor she needed, couldn't afford medicine. I worked myself into the ground trying to get the money together, and by the time I did, it was too late. If someone had offered help, then—" He stopped. "Well, no one did. So maybe I can offer it now. I'm not your wife." "No, but you're someone who needs help. That's enough." They sat in silence for a moment. Then Evelyn said quietly, "Thank you. For today. For this. I'll work hard. I'll earn my keep." "I don't doubt it." Samuel stood and collected the bowls. "Get some rest. Tomorrow's soon enough to start worrying about work." But sleep didn't come easily that night. Evelyn lay in the narrow bed, staring at the ceiling, listening to the unfamiliar sounds of the house. Samuel's footsteps moving through the main room, Mila's small cough from the other bedroom, the wind against the windows. Every sound made her tense, waiting for the crash of a door, the shout of men coming to collect their debt. But no one came. The night passed slowly, and eventually exhaustion won over fear. The next few days fell into a pattern. Evelyn woke before dawn and started the fire. then made breakfast, whatever she could find in the kitchen. Samuel ate quickly and headed out to work the ranch. Mila shadowed Evelyn, watching everything she did with solemn intensity. The house, Evelyn quickly realized, had been running on momentum alone. Dishes piled in the basin because no one washed them until they were needed again. Laundry accumulated until Samuel or Mila ran out of clean clothes. Floors went unswept. The stove needed blacking. Every surface carried a film of dust. She started small. First the dishes, washing everything and putting it away properly. Then the floors, sweeping and scrubbing until the boards showed their original color. The stove took half a day, but when she finished, it gleamed. Mila helped in her own way, carrying water and holding dustpans, asking questions constantly. Why did Evelyn wash dishes with hot water? Why did she scrub in circles? Why did she hang laundry this way instead of that way? Evelyn answered patiently, remembering her own childhood when her mother had taught her these same tasks. It felt strange to be the teacher now, strange to have someone look to her for answers. Samuel noticed the changes but said little. He'd come in for meals, which were now hot and ready at regular times, nod his approval, and return to work. He was a man of few words, Evelyn realized. Not cold, just economical with speech. It was the fourth night when things shifted. Evelyn had put Mila to bed and was finishing the kitchen cleaning when she heard the girl crying. Soft, muffled sobs coming from behind the closed bedroom door. She hesitated. Samuel was still outside, checking on a pregnant mare in the barn. This wasn't Evelyn's place, not really. She was hired help, not family. But the crying continued, and Evelyn's feet moved before she decided to. She knocked softly on Mila's door. "It's Mrs. Moore. Can I come in?" The crying stopped. A pause, then, "Okay." Evelyn opened the door. The room was small and neat, with a single bed and a dresser. Mila sat on the bed, hugging a rag doll that had seen better days. In the lamplight, her face was wet with tears. "What's wrong?" Evelyn asked gently, sitting on the edge of the bed. "I can't sleep." Mila's voice was thick. "I keep thinking about Mama." "Does this happen often?" Mila nodded. "Papa doesn't know. I don't tell him because it makes him sad." Something in Evelyn's chest tightened. 7 years old and already protecting her father from her grief. "It's okay to be sad," Evelyn said. "Your mama died. That's a sad thing. But it makes Papa sad when I cry." "Oh, your Papa is sad anyway," Evelyn said gently. "Not because of you, because he misses her too. You crying doesn't make it worse. It's how you feel." Mila considered this, wiping her nose on her sleeve. "Do you miss your husband?" "Sometimes." It was the truth. "We weren't married very long and things were hard. But yes, sometimes I miss him." "Does it stop hurting?" Evelyn thought about lying, about giving comfort, but children deserved honesty even when it hurt. "It hurts less," she said, "but I don't think it stops completely. We just learn to carry it better." Mila looked at her doll. "Mama made this for me, before she got too sick to sew. It's beautiful. Her name is Rose, like Mama's middle name. That's a good name." They sat quietly for a moment. Then Mila asked, "Will you stay, even if those bad men come back?" So the child had heard something or understood more than they'd thought. Evelyn chose her words carefully. "I'm going to try very hard to stay," she said. "But I can't promise forever. Sometimes things happen that we can't control." "Like Mama dying?" "Yes, like that." Mila nodded, accepting this with the pragmatism children sometimes showed. "Can you sing?" "A little. Why?" "Mama used to sing when I couldn't sleep." Evelyn's own mother had sung too, old songs from the country she'd left behind, melodies Evelyn hadn't thought about in years. She wasn't sure she remembered the words, but she could try. She started softly, a lullaby about a ship on the ocean, about coming home. Her voice was rusty, uncertain at first, but the melody came back as she sang. Mila's eyes grew heavy, and by the second verse she was asleep, the doll clutched in her arms. Evelyn stood carefully, pulling the blanket up over the child's shoulders. She was turning to leave when she saw Samuel standing in the doorway. She jumped, startled. "I'm sorry. I heard her crying and I thought—" "Thank you." Samuel's voice was quiet. She tries to hide it from me. The nightmares, the crying. I knew, but he stopped, his throat working. I didn't know what to do, what to say. You're doing fine. I'm failing her. It came out flat. She needs things I can't give her. Comfort, security, the kind of things a mother provides. She needs her father, Evelyn said firmly, and she has him. Everything else she'll learn to live with. Children are tougher than we think. Samuel looked at his sleeping daughter, his expression unreadable. Elizabeth used to sing that song. I haven't heard it since she died. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to. No. He looked at Evelyn. It's good. She should hear it. She should remember. He paused. Thank you for this, for all of it. The house, the food, He gestured vaguely. Everything's different, better. That's what I'm here for. It's more than that. Samuel's gaze was steady. You're giving her something I couldn't, something she needs. They stood in the hallway, the lamplight casting long shadows. Evelyn realized how close they were standing, how quiet the house was. She stepped back, suddenly aware of the impropriety of being alone with a man in the night, even in his own home. I should get to bed, she said. Morning comes early. Samuel nodded. Good night, Mrs. Moore. Good night. But as Evelyn lay in her bed that night, sleep elusive again, she thought about the look on Samuel's face when he'd listened to her sing. The grief there, yes, but also something else. Relief, maybe. Or gratitude. Or maybe just the recognition that loss was something they both understood. The days continued. Evelyn settled into the rhythm of the ranch, up before dawn, breakfast, cleaning, laundry, mending, cooking. Mila was her constant companion, chattering about everything and nothing, slowly opening up about her mother, about the time before Evelyn came. Samuel worked from sunup to sundown, managing the cattle, repairing fences, preparing for winter. He was a good rancher, Evelyn saw. Thorough, patient with the animals, hard on himself. At meals, they talked about practical things, supplies needed, weather coming, tasks to be done. Samuel asked about Mila's day, listened to her excited descriptions of helping Evelyn bake bread or chase chickens. He was present in a way Thomas had never been, attentive even when exhausted. Evelyn found herself noticing small things about him, how he always hung his coat on the same peg, how he drank coffee black, standing by the window, looking out at his land like he was checking that it was still there. How he was gentle with his daughter, but firm when he needed to be. He was nothing like Thomas. Thomas had been loud, optimistic, full of grand plans that never materialized. Samuel was quiet, realistic, focused on what could be done rather than what might be possible. She didn't know if that made him better or just different. 2 weeks passed, then 3. The bruise on Evelyn's face faded to yellow, then disappeared. The split lip healed. The fear that woke her at night gradually lessened, though it never completely left. The men didn't come back. Every day that passed without them made Evelyn breathe a little easier, though she knew Samuel still watched the road, still kept his gun close. The house transformed around them. What had been simply functional became comfortable. Evelyn hung curtains in the windows. Simple things she'd sewn from fabric Samuel bought in town. She organized the kitchen so everything had its place. She scrubbed years of grime from corners and surfaces. It started to feel almost like a home, almost like somewhere she could belong. Then came the day she collapsed in the garden. Evelyn had been weeding the small vegetable plot behind the house, preparing it for spring planting, when the world suddenly tilted. Her vision grayed at the edges, her stomach lurched, and before she could call out, everything went dark. She woke to Mila's frightened face hovering over her. Mrs. Moore? Mrs. Moore, wake up! I'm all right, Evelyn tried to say, but her voice came out weak. She tried to sit up and immediately regretted it as nausea washed over her. Papa! Mila's scream was shrill with panic. Papa, come quick! Footsteps running. Then Samuel was there, kneeling beside her, his hands supporting her shoulders. What happened? His voice was sharp with concern. I just felt dizzy. It's nothing. You fainted. That's not nothing. He looked at Mila. Go inside and get water. Quick now. Mila ran. Samuel helped Evelyn to a sitting position, his movements careful. When did you last eat? Breakfast. That was 6 hours ago. I wasn't hungry. Samuel's jaw tightened. You've been working yourself too hard. I've seen you, up before dawn, working all day, barely stopping to rest. I'm earning my keep. You're not a slave, Samuel said flatly. You need to eat. You need to rest. If you're sick, I'm not sick. But even as she said it, Evelyn realized it might not be true. She'd been tired lately, more tired than the work warranted. Her stomach had been unsettled in the mornings, and her monthly bleeding, which had always been regular. The realization hit her like cold water. When had her last bleeding been? Before the men came to her house. Before that, even. Which meant, no, it couldn't be. But as she sat there in the dirt, Samuel's concerned face above her and Mila running back with water, Evelyn counted backwards and felt her world tilt again. 6 weeks, maybe 7, maybe more. She was pregnant, with Thomas's child. The doctor's office in town smelled of carbolic acid and old leather. Evelyn sat on the examination table, her hands folded tightly in her lap, while Dr. Harrison washed his hands in the basin. Samuel waited outside with Mila, though he'd insisted on making the trip when Evelyn had fainted twice more in the days following the garden incident. Dr. Harrison was an older man, gray-bearded and methodical, who'd been practicing medicine in Kansas Territory since before the war. He dried his hands and turned to face Evelyn with the expression of someone about to deliver news he'd delivered 100 times before. Mrs. Moore, when was your last monthly bleeding? Evelyn had known this question was coming. She'd prepared herself for it during the long wagon ride into town, but hearing it spoken aloud still made her throat tighten. 8 weeks ago, maybe 9. The doctor nodded, making a note in his ledger. And the fainting spells. Any nausea, particularly in the mornings? Yes. Tender breasts? Fatigue? Yes. Her voice came out barely above a whisper. Dr. Harrison set down his pen and looked at her with professional sympathy. Mrs. Moore, I believe you're with child, approximately 2 months along by my estimation. The symptoms are quite consistent. Even though she'd known, had been certain since that moment in the garden, hearing it confirmed made it real in a way her own suspicions hadn't. Evelyn closed her eyes, feeling the room tilt again, though she was sitting down. Is the child healthy? She managed to ask. Too early to say for certain, but you appear to be in good health overall, despite the fainting. You'll need to eat more, rest more. The first few months can be difficult, but most women manage well enough. He paused. Does your husband know? My husband is dead. The words came out flat. He died 7 months ago. Dr. Harrison's expression shifted to something softer. I see. I'm sorry for your loss. But the child's father was my husband, Evelyn said firmly. There's no one else. Of course. The doctor cleared his throat. Well, you'll need support, Mrs. Moore. A pregnant widow faces certain difficulties. Do you have family, friends who can help? I'm staying with Samuel Reed, working as his housekeeper. Ah. Something in the doctor's tone made Evelyn look up sharply. He was studying her with a new kind of assessment, one that made her skin prickle with discomfort. Does Mr. Reed know about your condition? Not yet. You'll need to tell him. He has a right to know if he's providing you shelter. I know that. Evelyn stood, her legs steadier now. Is there anything else? Dr. Harrison handed her a small bottle. Ginger powder. Mix a pinch in warm water when the nausea gets bad. Eat small meals throughout the day rather than large ones. And Mrs. Moore? He waited until she met his eyes. Be careful. A woman in your position is vulnerable. Make sure Mr. Reed understands the nature of your arrangement. People will talk. People always talk. Yes, but sometimes what they say can cause real harm. Evelyn paid him with money Samuel had given her for the visit, then stepped out into the afternoon sun. Samuel was leaning against the wagon, Mila beside him eating a peppermint stick from the general store. Both looked up as she approached. Well? Samuel asked. Evelyn glanced at Mila, then back at Samuel. Can we talk? Privately? Something in her tone made Samuel's expression sharpen. He looked at his daughter. Mila, go look at the ribbons in the store window. Don't wander off. Yes, Papa. Mila skipped away, her peppermint stick leaving sticky traces on her fingers. Samuel waited until she was out of earshot, then turned to Evelyn. What did he say? I'm pregnant. The words came out blunt, graceless. She hadn't planned how to say it, and now it was simply there between them. Samuel went very still. For a long moment he said nothing, just looked at her with an expression she couldn't read. Then, how far along? 2 months? Maybe a bit more. Your husband's? The question shouldn't have stung, but it did. Yes, there's been no one else. Samuel nodded slowly, his gaze distant. Does this change your plans? Do you need to leave? I don't know. Evelyn wrapped her arms around herself despite the warmth of the day. I don't have anywhere to go. No family, no money for travel. Not really. But I understand if you don't want me to stay. A pregnant widow brings talk, and I don't care about talk, Samuel interrupted. His voice was quiet but firm. Question is, what do you want to do? What did she want? The question was so simple and so complicated at once. She wanted her husband alive. She wanted the debts erased. She wanted to not be terrified of what came next. But those were impossible wants. I want to keep the baby, she said finally. I want somewhere safe to have it. Beyond that. She shook her head. I don't know. Samuel was quiet for another moment, then said, You can stay, for as long as you need, through the birth and after, if you want. People will assume things, about you and me, about the baby. Let them assume. He pushed off from the wagon. You've got a few months before the baby comes. We'll figure out the rest as we go. Relief washed through Evelyn so strongly, her knees almost buckled. Thank you. I'll work as long as I'm able. I won't be a burden. You're not a burden. Samuel's gaze met hers directly. You're helping me raise my daughter. You've made my house a home again. That's worth more than you know. They stood there in the dusty street, the afternoon sun warm on their faces, connected by an understanding that didn't need more words. Then Mila came running back, her face alight with excitement about the ribbons she'd seen, and the moment passed. The ride back to the ranch was quiet. Mila chattered from the wagon bed, but Samuel and Evelyn said little. There was too much to think about, too many implications to work through. But as they pulled up to the house, Evelyn felt something unexpected, not quite hope, but a cousin to it. She had a place to stay, time to prepare, a chance, however small, that things might work out. She should have known better than to trust that feeling. 3 days later, just after sunset, the men came back. Evelyn was washing dishes when she heard horses, multiple horses, moving fast. Her hands froze in the water. Through the kitchen window, she saw riders approaching, silhouetted against the dying light. 5 of them this time. Samuel! Her voice came out sharp with fear. He was there in seconds, moving to the window. His jaw tightened when he saw them. Mila, go to your room. Now! Papa! Now! The command in his voice sent Mila running. Samuel crossed to the door where his gun belt hung. He strapped it on with practiced efficiency, then looked at Evelyn. Stay inside. No matter what happens, you stay inside. They're here for me. They're on my land. That makes it my business. He checked his gun, then moved toward the door. Lock it behind me. Samuel, don't! But he was already gone, stepping out onto the porch with the kind of calm that came from absolute certainty. Evelyn moved to the window, her heart hammering. The riders had stopped about 20 feet from the house. Cyrus Holt was in front, flanked by the scarred man and 3 others Evelyn didn't recognize. All were armed. All looked ready for trouble. Reed, Cyrus's voice carried clearly in the evening air. We've got business with the woman you're harboring. Mrs. Moore is under my protection. Samuel's voice was level, conversational almost. Which means you've got no business here at all. The lady owes a debt. That debt follows her wherever she goes. Show me the papers. Cyrus pulled something from his coat. Papers. Yellowed and folded. Right here. Signed by Thomas Moore and witnessed legal. $640 due and unpaid. His widow inherits the debt. That's not how law works. It's how it works out here. Cyrus shifted in his saddle. Now, we've been patient. We gave her time, but time's up. She comes with us tonight, Works off what's owed, everyone's happy. She's not going anywhere. You can't stop all of us, Reed. Be smart. Hand her over. This stays peaceful. Samuel's hand rested on his gun, casual but ready. I'm counting 5 of you. Figure I can drop 3 before you get me. Question is, which 3 want to die over a debt that's not even legal? The rider shifted uncomfortably. One of the new men, younger than the others, glanced at Cyrus nervously. Big talk from one man, Cyrus said, but his voice had lost some of its certainty. Not just one man. The voice came from behind the riders, making them spin in their saddles. A man on horseback had appeared from the direction of the road. Older, gray-haired, wearing a marshal's badge that caught the last light. He rode forward slowly, his rifle resting across his saddle. Marshal Webb. Cyrus's voice went tight. This is private business. Private business that involves threats on a man's property. That makes it my business. Webb stopped his horse between Samuel and the riders. Now, I heard something about a debt. Let me see those papers. Cyrus hesitated, then handed them over. Webb studied them by the fading light, his expression unreadable. Finally, he handed them back. These papers are worth about as much as the horse shit in my barn, he said flatly. Thomas Moore died. His personal debts died with him. His widow has no legal obligation. She benefited from the money. Did she? Webb's voice sharpened. Because from what I hear, Moore lost everything before he died. His land sold. His equipment's gone. If there was any benefit, it's long gone. You can't collect blood from a stone, Holt, and you sure as hell can't collect it from a widow who's got nothing. We have rights. You have the right to leave, right now, before I arrest all of you for trespassing and making threats. For a long moment, no one moved. Then Cyrus folded the papers and tucked them away. This isn't over. Yeah, it is. Webb's voice went cold. You come back here, you're getting arrested. You go near Mrs. Moore again anywhere, you're getting arrested. That clear enough for you? Cyrus's face went red, but he jerked his horse around. Let's go. The 5 riders left at a canter, disappearing into the darkness. Webb watched them go, then turned to Samuel. You all right? Thanks to you. Samuel climbed down from the porch. How'd you know to come? Got a telegram from Doc Harrison. Said there might be trouble out here. Asked me to check on things. Webb glanced at the house, where Evelyn stood visible in the window. That the widow? Mrs. Moore, yes. She really pregnant? Samuel stiffened. That's none of your concern. It is if it causes more trouble. Webb sighed. Look, Reed, I know you're trying to help, but a single man and a pregnant widow under one roof, people are going to talk, and talk leads to trouble. Then they can talk to me about it. I'm just saying, might be worth thinking about how this looks, for her sake and yours. Samuel's jaw worked, but he nodded. Noted. Thanks for coming out. Part of the job. Webb tipped his hat and rode off into the darkness. Samuel stood in the yard for a long moment, then turned back to the house. Evelyn met him at the door. They're gone, he said. For now. Evelyn's hands were shaking. She clasped them together to hide it. But you heard what the marshal said. They'll come back. Or people will talk, or let them talk. It's not that simple. The words came out sharper than she intended. You have a daughter, a reputation. I'm bringing shame to your house just by being here. And now with the baby. She pressed a hand to her still flat stomach. Maybe I should leave. Go east like we talked about, before things get worse. And go where? Do what? Samuel's voice was gentle but insistent. You're 2 months pregnant. You have no money, no family. Running won't make you safer. But staying makes you a target. I can handle it. Can you? Evelyn met his eyes. What happens when they come back with more men? What happens when they stop trying to take me and start trying to hurt you? What happens to Mila if you die trying to protect someone you barely know? The question hung between them. Samuel looked away first. I can't just let them take you, he said quietly. I can't do that. Why not? The question came out almost desperate. Why risk everything for me? Samuel was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice was rough with emotion. Because Elizabeth was sick for months before she died. And I knew she was getting worse, but I kept telling myself there was time. Time to earn money for the doctor. Time to make things right. Time to tell her everything I should have said years ago. He looked at Evelyn, his eyes bright. But there wasn't time. And when she died, I realized I'd spent so much time working and planning and trying to fix things that I'd forgotten to just be there. To help when help was needed, not when it was convenient. He shook his head. I can't fix what happened with Elizabeth, but I can help you. And maybe that's not noble or smart, but it's what I need to do. For her. For me. So please, don't ask me to stop. Evelyn felt tears burning in her eyes. I don't want you to get hurt because of me. Then help me figure out how to keep everyone safe, Samuel's voice steadied. But don't run. Not yet. Not unless you really want to. Inside the house, Evelyn could hear Mila moving around in her room, probably listening to every word. Outside, the night pressed close, full of dangers both known and unknown. But here, standing on this porch, with this quiet man who'd chosen to help her for reasons even he didn't fully understand, Evelyn felt something shift. Not safety, exactly, but solidarity. The sense that she wasn't facing the darkness alone. All right, she said finally. I'll stay, for now. Samuel nodded. Then we'll figure out the rest together. They went inside, locked the doors, and tried to pretend the world beyond the windows wasn't circling like wolves waiting for weakness. 2 weeks passed with no sign of Cyrus or his men. The marshal rode out twice to check on things, his presence both reassuring and unsettling, a reminder that the threat was real even when invisible. Evelyn's pregnancy became more obvious as her body began to change. Her dresses, already worn, grew tight across the middle. She let out seams and natted panels, working by lamplight after Mila went to bed. Samuel noticed but said nothing, his silence a kind of respect for her privacy. Mila, however, had questions. Many questions. Why is your stomach getting bigger? She asked one morning while they were making bread. Evelyn kept her hands working, kneading the dough. Because there's a baby growing inside me. Mila's eyes went wide. A real baby? Yes. Like how I was in Mama's stomach? Just like that. Mila processed this, her small face serious. Is it your husband's baby? Yes. He died before I knew about it. That's sad. Mila pressed her hand against the dough, making a small handprint. Will the baby have a papa? The question hit harder than Evelyn expected. She stopped kneading. The baby's papa is dead. So no, not in the way you mean. That's not fair. Every baby should have a papa. Life isn't always fair, sweetheart. Mila was quiet for a moment, then said, My papa could be its papa. If you asked him, he's good at being a papa. Evelyn's throat tightened. It doesn't work that way. Why not? Because Evelyn struggled for words that would make sense to a 7-year-old. Because your papa and I aren't married. We're not family like that. But you live here. You make food and clean and sing to me. That's what mamas do. I'm not your mama, Mila. I know. Mila looked up at her with those serious gray eyes. But you could be. And you could be the baby's mama. And Papa could be the baby's papa. And then we'd all be a family. It was the uncomplicated logic of childhood, where problems had simple solutions and love was straightforward. Evelyn wished desperately that the world worked that way. It's more complicated than that, she said gently. Why? Because people will talk? Mila's voice took on the echo of adult concerns heard and partially understood. Papa says we don't care what people say. Your papa is brave, but sometimes what people say can hurt us, even when we try not to let it. Mila thought about this, then shrugged and went back to playing with the dough. I still think he should be the baby's papa. It's lonely without a papa. I know because I'm lonely without a mama. The words stayed with Evelyn long after the bread was baked and Mila had moved on to other concerns. She thought about them that night as she lay in bed, one hand on her growing belly, feeling the first tiny flutters that might have been the baby or might have been her imagination. What did her child's future look like? A fatherless baby born to a widow with no money and no prospects. Even if Samuel let her stay through the birth, what then? She couldn't impose on his generosity forever. Eventually she'd have to leave, find work that would take a woman with an infant, build some kind of life. The possibilities all looked bleak. She must have finally fallen asleep because the next thing she knew, someone was shaking her awake. She opened her eyes to see Mila's face above her, pale in the darkness. "Mrs. Moore, wake up! Wake up!" Evelyn sat up, instantly alert. "What's wrong? Papa's gone. I heard horses, and when I looked, Papa went outside, and now he's been gone a long time, and I'm scared." Evelyn was out of bed and moving before Mila finished speaking. She grabbed her shawl and went to the window. Outside, she could see nothing in the darkness. No movement, no lights, no sign of Samuel or anyone else. "Stay here," she told Mila. "Lock the door behind me." "No, don't go out there." But Evelyn was already moving. She grabbed the kitchen knife, inadequate but better than nothing, and stepped out onto the porch. The night was moonless and still. She could hear crickets, the distant sound of cattle, nothing else. She moved to the porch rail, straining to see or hear anything unusual. "Samuel," she called softly. "Samuel, where are you?" No answer. She was about to go back inside and ride for the marshal when she heard it, voices from the direction of the barn. Low, angry. She couldn't make out words, but the tone was clear enough. Confrontation, maybe violence. Evelyn descended the porch steps, her heart hammering. Every instinct screamed at her to go back, to lock the door, to hide. But Samuel was out there. Samuel, who'd protected her, who'd offered shelter when she had nothing, who'd stood between her and men who wanted to hurt her. She couldn't leave him alone. The barn door was partially open, spilling lamplight into the yard. Evelyn approached slowly, the knife gripped tight in her hand. Inside, she heard Samuel's voice, strained but controlled. "I said get off my land." "Not until we get what we came for." Cyrus's voice, harder now, desperate. "You think the marshal scared us off? He's one man in a big territory. He can't protect you forever." "He doesn't need to. I can protect myself." "Can you?" A different voice, younger. "Because it looks like you're alone in a barn with 5 men who are done being polite." Evelyn reached the barn door and peered inside. The scene was worse than she'd feared. Samuel stood in the center of the barn, his back to a post. The 5 men surrounded him, Cyrus, the scarred man, and 3 others. Samuel's gun lay on the ground, kicked out of reach. Blood ran from a cut above his eye. They'd ambushed him, gotten the drop on him somehow. And now they were going to beat him until he gave her up. Evelyn stepped through the door. "I'm here," she said. Her voice shook, but she forced it steady. "You want me?" "Here I am. Let him go." All 6 men turned. Cyrus's face split in a grin that had nothing to do with humor. "Well now," he said. "That makes things easier." Samuel's eyes went wide with horror. "Evelyn, run! Get out of here!" But 2 of the men were already moving toward her. She backed up, raising the knife, but the scarred man simply grabbed her wrist and twisted. The knife clattered to the ground. "No!" Samuel lunged forward, but Cyrus hit him in the stomach, doubling him over. "Stop!" Evelyn shouted. "Stop hurting him. I'll come with you. I'll do whatever you want. Just stop." Cyrus looked at her, then at Samuel, considering. Then he smiled. "No," he said. "I don't think I will stop. See, Reed here has been a thorn in my side. Cost me time, cost me money. I think maybe he needs to learn what happens to people who interfere in my business." He nodded to the other men. They advanced on Samuel, who tried to fight but was outnumbered and already hurt. Evelyn heard the sickening sound of fists on flesh, heard Samuel grunt in pain. "Stop it!" She tried to pull away from the scarred man, but his grip was iron. "You're killing him." "Nah," Cyrus said casually. "Just teaching him a lesson. Though if he doesn't survive the lesson, well, that's on him for being stupid." Rage flooded through Evelyn, hot and fierce. She stopped trying to pull away and instead lunged forward, using the scarred man's grip as leverage. Her head connected with his nose, and she felt cartilage crunch. He yelled and released her. She dove for Samuel's gun. Her fingers closed around the grip just as someone grabbed her ankle. She kicked backward, connected with something, pulled the gun close. She'd never fired a gun in her life, but she'd watched Thomas clean his revolver enough times to know the basics. She rolled onto her back, thumbed back the hammer, and pulled the trigger. The sound was deafening in the enclosed barn. The shot went wide, hitting the wall, but every man froze. Evelyn scrambled to her feet, the gun shaking in her hands, pointing at Cyrus. "Get away from him," she said. Her voice came out stronger than she felt. "Get away or I swear I'll shoot you." Cyrus raised his hand slowly, mockingly. "You even know how to use that?" "I know enough." She steadied her grip. "Samuel, can you stand?" He was on his hands and knees, blood dripping from his nose and mouth. "Yeah, I can stand." He pulled himself up using the post, his movements pained but determined. Evelyn kept the gun trained on Cyrus. "Now," she said, "you're all going to leave, and you're never coming back. Because if you do, I'll kill you. I have nothing left to lose. Do you understand?" Something in her voice must have convinced them. The desperation, the absolute sincerity. Cyrus lowered his hands. "You can't run forever." "I'm not running. I'm staying right here. And if you want to try this again, you'll have to kill us both." "Is that debt worth 2 murders, Mr. Holt? Is it worth hanging?" The question hung in the air. Finally, Cyrus jerked his head toward the door. "This isn't over," he said. "Yes, it is," Samuel said, his voice thick but firm. "Because the next time you set foot on my property, I'll kill you. That's not a threat. It's a promise." The men filed out. Evelyn and Samuel stood frozen until they heard horses leaving, galloping away into the darkness. Then Evelyn's hand started shaking so badly she almost dropped the gun. Samuel took it from her gently, set it aside, and pulled her into his arms. She collapsed against him, feeling him solid and real and alive. His shirt was bloody, his breathing ragged, but he was alive. "You came after me," he said into her hair. "You stupid, brave woman. You came after me." "I couldn't leave you." The words came out muffled against his chest. "I couldn't." They stood there in the lamplight, holding each other while the world slowly steadied around them. Outside, the night had returned to its normal sounds. Inside, everything had changed, because Evelyn had made a choice, and so had Samuel, and neither of them could take it back. The morning after the barn incident, Evelyn woke to find Samuel already gone from the house. She'd spent the night cleaning his wounds, the cut above his eye, the split lip, the bruised ribs that made him wince with every breath. He'd protested that he was fine, but she'd ignored him, working with steady hands while Mila watched from the doorway with wide, frightened eyes. Now, in the pale light of dawn, Evelyn found him in the barn, mucking out stalls like nothing had happened. His movements were stiff, careful, but he worked with the same methodical determination he brought to everything. "You should be resting," she said from the doorway. He didn't turn around. Work doesn't stop because a man gets knocked around. "Samuel, I'm fine, Evelyn." He finally looked at her, and the bruises on his face were darker in the daylight, purple and yellow spreading across his cheekbone. "Go back inside. Take care of Mila." But Evelyn didn't move. She crossed her arms, feeling the anger that had been building since she'd woken. "They could have killed you." "They didn't. They wanted to. And they will next time, because there will be a next time. You know that, don't you?" Her voice rose despite her effort to control it. "They're not going to stop. The marshal can't watch us every day. And eventually they'll come back with more men, more weapons, more. Then I'll deal with it when it happens." Samuel set down the pitchfork, wincing at the movement. "What do you want me to do, Evelyn? Throw you out? Hand you over to save my own skin?" "I want you to think about your daughter." The words exploded out of her. "I want you to think about what happens to Mila if you die protecting a woman and a baby that aren't even yours." The silence that followed was thick and painful. Samuel leaned against the stall door, his jaw working. "That baby," he said quietly, "is innocent of whatever debts your husband left behind. And you didn't ask for any of this, not the debts, not the widowhood, not those men hunting you like your property to be collected." He met her eyes. "I'm not throwing you to wolves because it would make my life easier. That's not who I am. That's not who I want Mila to think I am." "Then what are we going to do?" Evelyn's anger drained away, leaving exhaustion in its wake. "Because I can't keep putting you in danger. I can't keep watching you get hurt because of me." Samuel was quiet for a long moment, his gaze distant. When he spoke, his voice was careful, like he was testing the weight of each word. "There might be a way to make them stop, legally." "What way?" He looked at her directly. "Marriage." Evelyn's breath caught. "What?" "If we were married, you'd be under my name, my protection. The debt would be even more clearly void because you'd be a married woman with a new identity. They couldn't touch you without going through me legally, and no judge would side with them over a legitimate marriage. That's... Evelyn couldn't find words. That's insane. We barely know each other. We know enough. Samuel pushed off from the stall door, moving closer. I know you're brave. I know you care about my daughter. I know you work hard and don't complain. That's more than some people know before they marry. But you don't love me. No, he agreed, and you don't love me. But love is a luxury, Evelyn. Security is a necessity. This would give you security. Give the baby a name. Give both of you protection. Evelyn's mind raced. Marriage. To this man she'd known for barely 2 months. It was practical, yes, but it was also permanent in a way that terrified her. What about you? She asked. What do you get out of this? A mother for Mila, help running the ranch, a family. He said it simply, like these were minor considerations. But Evelyn heard what he didn't say. The loneliness underneath, the weight of managing everything alone. People will talk. They'll say I trapped you, that the baby is yours, that people are already talking. Samuel's voice was firm. At least this way the talk has less teeth. We'd be respectable, legal. Whatever they say privately doesn't matter if we have the law on our side. And Cyrus, you think marriage papers will stop him? Combined with the marshal's warning and the legal standing? Yes. He's a criminal, but he's not stupid. Attacking a married couple, trying to collect a dead man's debt from a woman under her husband's protection, that's a fight he can't win. Evelyn wanted to argue, to find holes in his logic. But she couldn't. He was right. Marriage would give her protection, give the baby legitimacy, end the threat that hung over them like a storm waiting to break. But it also meant binding herself to this man, this life, this place, forever. I need to think, she said finally. Samuel nodded. Take the time you need. But Evelyn? He waited until she looked at him. This isn't charity. I'm not offering this out of pity. I'm offering it because it makes sense, for both of us. She left him in the barn and walked back to the house in a daze. Mila was at the kitchen table, eating bread and honey, her legs swinging beneath her chair. Is Papa okay? She asked, around a mouthful of food. He's working. He's fine. Are you okay? The simple question, asked with such concern, nearly broke Evelyn's composure. She sat down across from Mila, suddenly too tired to stand. I don't know, she said honestly. Mila swallowed her bread. Are you going to leave because of the bad men? I don't want to leave. Then don't. Again, that child's logic that made everything seem simple. Papa can protect you. He's really good at protecting people. He got hurt protecting me. But he won, Mila pointed out. You both did. You scared them away with the gun. Evelyn had tried not to think too much about those moments in the barn, the weight of the gun in her hands, the knowledge that she would have shot Cyrus if he'd forced her to. She'd been prepared to kill. That realization sat heavy in her chest. Mila, she said carefully, if I stayed here permanently, if I became part of your family officially, how would you feel about that? Mila's eyes widened. You mean like being my new mama? Something like that. Not replacing your real mama, but I'd like that. Mila's response was immediate and enthusiastic. I'd like that a lot. Then you couldn't leave even if you wanted to. Is that why you'd want it? So I couldn't leave? Mila thought about this, her face scrunching in concentration. No. I'd want it because you're nice, and you sing, and you make good food, and you don't get mad when I ask too many questions, and because, she paused, her voice going softer. Because the house feels right when you're here, like it used to feel when Mama was alive. Not the same, but good again. Evelyn felt tears burning behind her eyes. That's a very sweet thing to say. It's true. Mila reached across the table and patted Evelyn's hand with sticky fingers. You should stay forever, and the baby should stay too. We could be a real family. Out of the mouths of children came truths that adults spent weeks dancing around. Evelyn squeezed Mila's hand gently. I'll think about it, she promised. The day passed in a haze of ordinary tasks. Evelyn cooked, cleaned, mended a tear in one of Mila's dresses. Samuel worked outside, visible through the windows, his movements still careful but steady. They ate dinner together that evening, the three of them around the table, and talked about safe things, the weather turning colder, the cattle needing to be moved to winter pasture, whether the chickens were laying well. They didn't talk about marriage. They didn't talk about the men who'd attacked them. They didn't talk about the choice hanging between them like a blade. That night, after Mila was asleep, Evelyn sat on the porch wrapped in a shawl, watching the stars come out. She heard the door open behind her, then Samuel's careful footsteps. "Mind if I sit?" he asked. She shook her head. He settled into the chair beside her with a suppressed grunt of pain. "Ribs still hurt?" she asked. "They'll heal." He was quiet for a moment, then said, "I've been thinking about what you said this morning, about putting Mila at risk." "Samuel, let me finish." His voice was gentle but firm. "You're right that I need to think about her, but I am thinking about her. I'm thinking about what kind of man I want her to see me as, what kind of lessons I'm teaching her by my actions." "What do you mean?" He leaned back, looking up at the stars. "When Elizabeth died, I made Mila a promise. I promised I'd take care of her, protect her, give her a good life. But more than that, I promised I'd teach her to be strong, to stand up for what's right, even when it's hard, to help people who need help." He turned to look at Evelyn. "If I throw you out to save myself trouble, what does that teach her? That people are disposable when they become inconvenient? That safety matters more than doing right? It's not that simple." "It is, though. Some things are simple, even when they're hard." He paused. "I watched my wife die because I couldn't help her in time. I carry that every day. And maybe helping you doesn't fix that, but it means something. It means I'm the kind of man who doesn't walk away when someone needs him." Evelyn's throat tightened. "You're a good man, Samuel Reed. I'm just a man, trying to do right by the people under my roof." He shifted in his chair. "Have you thought about my proposal?" "I've thought about little else." "And?" Evelyn took a deep breath. "I need to know something first. If we do this, if we marry, what would you expect from me, beyond cooking and cleaning and helping with Mila?" She didn't say the rest out loud, but Samuel understood. His expression softened. "I'd expect nothing you're not willing to give. We'd have separate rooms, our own space. This would be a practical arrangement, not—" He paused, choosing words carefully. "Not a traditional marriage in all ways, unless or until you wanted it to be different. And you might never want that, and that would be fine. You'd be tying yourself to a pregnant widow. You deserve better than that." "I deserve what I choose, and I'm choosing this." He looked at her steadily. "But you need to choose it too, not because you're desperate or scared, but because you think it's right. For you and for the baby." Evelyn looked out at the dark land stretching endlessly toward the horizon. 2 months ago, she'd been alone in a collapsing farmhouse, facing violence and despair with nothing but stubborn pride to sustain her. Now she sat on a ranch house porch beside a man offering her safety, protection, a future. It wasn't love, but maybe it was something better: partnership, respect, mutual need that didn't diminish either of them. "If we do this," she said slowly, "I need to be useful. Not just a burden you took on. I need to contribute, to have purpose. You already do that. I mean permanently. I need to know I'm here because I belong, not because you pity me." Done. And Mila. She needs to understand that I'm not trying to replace her mother. I can be someone who cares for her, but Elizabeth will always be her mama. I'll make sure she knows. Evelyn took another breath. This was it. The moment of choosing. She could say no, try to make it on her own, face whatever came with only her own strength to rely on. Or she could say yes, accept this man's protection, bind herself to a life she'd never imagined. "All right," she said quietly. "Yes, I'll marry you." Samuel let out a breath she hadn't realized he'd been holding. "You're sure?" "I'm terrified. But yes, I'm sure." He reached over and took her hand. His grip was warm, calloused, steady. "We'll figure it out as we go. Both of us." They sat like that for a long time, hands linked, watching the stars wheel overhead. And despite everything, the fear, the uncertainty, the strangeness of it all, Evelyn felt something loosen in her chest, Not quite peace, but acceptance. She'd made her choice. Now she'd live with it. The next morning, Samuel rode into town to speak with the minister and file the necessary papers. He took Mila with him, partly to visit the general store and partly, Evelyn suspected, to give her time alone to adjust to what was coming. Evelyn spent the day in a strange fugue state, going through the motions of her tasks while her mind spun in circles. She was getting married. Again. To a man she barely knew. In 3 days, according to what Samuel had said before leaving, the minister had required a brief waiting period, though he'd agreed to waive the reading of bans given the circumstances. 3 days. Then she'd be Evelyn Reed instead of Evelyn Moore, a rancher's wife instead of a widow, a stepmother. All the identities stacking up like layers she'd have to learn to wear. She was scrubbing the kitchen floor when she heard a wagon approaching. Looking out, she saw Marshall Webb climbing down from his horse, his face set in serious lines. Evelyn dried her hands and met him at the door. "Marshall, is something wrong? Need to speak with you and Reed both. He around?" "He's in town. Should be back within the hour." Webb nodded. "I'll wait, if that's all right." Evelyn offered him coffee, which he accepted, and they sat at the kitchen table in uncomfortable silence. Finally, Webb cleared his throat. "I heard something in town, rumor going around that you and Reed are planning to marry." "That's not a rumor. It's true." Webb's expression didn't change. "That's sudden. I need protection. Marriage provides it." "Does it, though?" Webb leaned forward. "Because here's the thing, Mrs. Moore. Those men who've been after you, they're not going to see a marriage license and give up. If anything, it might make them more determined. Make them feel like you're trying to cheat them out of what they think they're owed." "What they think they're owed is illegal. You said so yourself." "I did. But legal and safe aren't always the same thing." He paused. "I'm not saying don't marry Reed. I'm saying be prepared for consequences. Have a plan beyond just changing your name." "What kind of plan?" "The kind that involves being ready if they come back. Being armed, being alert, not going anywhere alone." He met her eyes. "I can't protect you all the time, Mrs. Moore. Neither can Reed. You need to be able to protect yourself." "I shot at them once. I can do it again." "Can you?" Webb's voice was gentle but probing. "Can you actually pull the trigger if it comes to killing? Because wanting to and being able to are different things." Evelyn thought about that moment in the barn. The gun heavy in her hands, Cyrus's mocking face, the absolute certainty that she would shoot if necessary. She met Webb's gaze steadily. "Yes, I can." Something in her tone convinced him. He nodded slowly. "All right then. Just wanted to make sure you knew what you're getting into." "I know." "Good." He stood, leaving his coffee half finished. "Tell Reed I stopped by, and Mrs. Moore, congratulations on your marriage. I hope it brings you the safety you're looking for." After he left, Evelyn sat at the table for a long time, thinking about his words. Consequences. Plans. The reality that marriage might not solve everything might actually make some things worse, but she'd already made her choice. There was no going back now. Samuel and Mila returned in late afternoon, the wagon loaded with supplies. Mila ran inside, bursting with excitement about the ribbons she'd been allowed to pick out at the store. Samuel followed more slowly, his movements still careful. "The minister agreed to 3 days from now," he said, setting packages on the table. "Sunday after services. He'll do it at the church with whoever wants to attend." "What did you tell him?" "About why we're marrying." "The truth. That you need protection, I need help, and it makes sense for both of us." He had opinions about it. Samuel's mouth quirked slightly, but he agreed it was better than the alternative. "Marshall Webb came by. He warned us that marriage might not stop Cyrus." "I know. I saw him in town. He gave me the same warning." Samuel started unpacking supplies. "But it's still the right move. Legal protection matters, even if it's not perfect." That night, lying in bed with one hand on her growing belly, Evelyn thought about the man sleeping in the room across the hall. In 3 days, he'd be her husband. Not in the way Thomas had been. There'd be no romance, no passionate vows, no belief in happily ever after. But maybe that was better. Maybe practical partnership, built on mutual need and respect, was more solid than romantic love that wilted under hardship. She hoped so, because she was betting her future and her child's future on it. The 3 days passed in a blur of preparation. Evelyn had no wedding dress. Her best dress was the gray one she wore every Sunday, so it would have to do. Samuel bought her a simple gold band in town, plain and practical. They told Mila, who reacted with such unbridled joy that both adults found themselves smiling despite their nerves. Sunday morning dawned cold and clear. Evelyn dressed carefully, her hands shaking slightly as she buttoned the gray dress. It was tight across her middle now, obviously so. Everyone who saw her would know she was pregnant, would count backward and whisper about timing and propriety. Let them whisper. She was past caring. The church was small, stone-built, with simple wooden pews and windows that let in harsh prairie light. When they arrived, Evelyn was surprised to see it wasn't empty. Maybe 24 people sat scattered throughout. Neighbors, townspeople, Marshal Webb in the back row. Samuel had said they could have witnesses if they wanted. Apparently word had spread. The minister was an older man named Reverend Crawford, gray-bearded and stern-faced. He met them at the door, his expression neutral. "Mr. Reed, Mrs. Moore, are you both certain about this?" "Yes," Samuel said firmly. "Mrs. Moore?" Evelyn looked at the people in the pews, then at Samuel beside her, then at Mila holding both their hands. She thought about the farmhouse with its peeling wallpaper and broken dreams, about the men who'd tried to own her, about the child growing inside her who deserved better than a mother running scared. "Yes," she said. "I'm certain." Reverend Crawford nodded. "Then let us begin." The ceremony was brief, almost curt. Reverend Crawford asked the required questions about willing consent and lifelong commitment. Samuel answered in his steady voice. Evelyn answered with hers, only slightly less steady. When asked if anyone objected, there was a moment of breath-held silence. Then it passed, and they continued. Samuel slipped the gold band onto Evelyn's finger. It was slightly loose. They'd have to have it sized, but it caught the light streaming through the windows. "By the authority vested in me," Reverend Crawford intoned, "I now pronounce you husband and wife. Mr. Reed, you may kiss your bride." Samuel looked at Evelyn, a question in his eyes. She nodded slightly. He leaned in and pressed his lips to hers, brief and chaste, more like sealing a contract than celebrating love. When he pulled back, he whispered, "All right?" "All right," she confirmed. They signed the papers while the congregation watched in silence. Marshal Webb came forward to serve as witness, along with a woman Evelyn recognized from town, Sarah, the neighbor who'd brought stew. Their signatures made it official, legal, binding. Evelyn Moore was dead. Evelyn Reed lived in her place. Outside, some neighbors offered congratulations. Others left quickly, their faces tight with judgment. Evelyn saw the calculations in their eyes, saw them noting her pregnant belly and doing the math. She lifted her chin and accepted their good wishes without shame. They were walking toward the wagon when Cyrus Holt stepped out from between two buildings. Samuel's hand went immediately to his gun, but Cyrus held up empty hands. "Not here for trouble," he said. His face was different from the last time Evelyn had seen him. Harder, but also resigned. "Just wanted to say congratulations on your marriage, Mrs. Reed." The name in his mouth felt like a threat. Evelyn stepped closer to Samuel. "You're not welcome here," Samuel said quietly. "Get out of town." "I'm going, but I wanted you both to know the debt's canceled. My employer decided it wasn't worth pursuing. Too much legal trouble, too much attention." He looked at Evelyn directly. "You're free. The marriage did what you wanted it to, made you too expensive to collect." Relief flooded through Evelyn so powerfully her knees almost buckled. "Why should I believe you?" Cyrus shrugged. "Believe what you want, but you won't see me again. Job's done, such as it is." He tipped his hat mockingly. "Enjoy your new life, Mrs. Reed. Hope it's worth what you paid for it." Then he was gone, disappearing into the street crowd. Samuel's hand remained on his gun until Cyrus was out of sight. Then he turned to Evelyn. "You believe him?" she asked. "Doesn't matter if I believe him. Matters that we're prepared either way." He helped her into the wagon, his hand steady on her arm. "But if he's telling the truth, that's one less thing to worry about." They rode home in silence, Mila chattering between them about the wedding, about how pretty it was, about how now they were a real family. Samuel and Evelyn let her talk, both lost in their own thoughts. When they reached the ranch, Samuel helped Evelyn down from the wagon. She stood in the yard, looking at the house that was now legally her home, at the man who was now legally her husband. "Well," she said, "what now?" Samuel looked at her, then at the ring on her finger, then back at her face. "Now we live, we work, we raise children, we build something." "Just like that?" "Just like that." He offered his arm. "Mrs. Reed, would you like to go inside your home?" Evelyn took his arm, feeling the solid weight of him beside her. "Yes, I would." They walked up the porch steps together, Mila running ahead to open the door, and crossed the threshold into their married life. Behind them, the sun climbed higher, burning away the morning chill. Ahead, whatever came next waited. But for the first time in longer than she could remember, Evelyn felt something she'd thought was lost forever. She felt like she might actually survive this, like she might even, possibly, eventually be all right. It was enough. For now, it was enough. Winter came to Kansas territory with the kind of cold that settled into bones and stayed there. The first snow fell 3 weeks after the wedding, coating the ranch in silence and white. Evelyn stood at the kitchen window watching it accumulate, one hand resting on her belly where the baby had started moving more insistently, small flutters that felt like butterflies trapped beneath her skin. Behind her, Samuel added wood to the fire while Mila practiced her letters at the table. It was a scene of such ordinary domesticity that sometimes Evelyn had to remind herself it was real, that this was actually her life now. "Mrs. Reed?" Mila's voice broke through her thoughts. The name still sounded strange to Evelyn's ears even weeks later. "Can you check my writing?" Evelyn moved to the table, looking over Mila's careful work. The letters were uneven but legible, showing improvement from when they'd started lessons a month ago. "That's very good. Your M's are much better." "No, Papa said Mama used to be a teacher before she got married. Is that true?" "I don't know, sweetheart. You'd have to ask him." Samuel looked up from the fireplace. "She taught in a schoolhouse in Missouri for 2 years. That's where I met her." It was one of the few times he'd mentioned his first wife unprompted. Evelyn had learned over the weeks that Elizabeth was a presence in the house, in the quilt on Mila's bed that she'd sewn, in the way Samuel touched certain objects with careful reverence, in the shadow that sometimes crossed his face when he thought no one was watching. Evelyn didn't resent it. She understood grief's long fingers. "Was she pretty?" Mila asked. "Very pretty. And smart. She could read Greek and Latin." "Can Mrs. Reed read Greek?" "No," Evelyn said with a small smile. "Just English, and barely any French from what my mother tried to teach me." "That's still good," Mila said loyally. She returned to her letters, and the moment passed. But later, after Mila had gone to bed and Samuel was checking the animals one final time before the temperature dropped further, Evelyn found herself thinking about Elizabeth Reed, the woman who'd lived in this house, slept in that room across the hall, loved this man, and bore his child. What would she think of the arrangement her husband had made? Would she approve of a pregnant widow wearing her gold wedding band because Evelyn had discovered the ring Samuel gave her had been Elizabeth's, resized to fit her smaller finger? She was still standing by the window when Samuel came back in, stamping snow from his boots. "Everything secure?" she asked. "As much as it can be. Going to be a hard night for the cattle." He moved to the fire, holding his hands out to the warmth. "You should get some sleep. Baby's taking energy from you." "I'm not tired yet." It was true. Despite her growing belly and the exhaustion that came with pregnancy, sleep had been elusive lately. Her mind wouldn't settle. Samuel studied her face, then gestured to the table. "Sit. I'll make tea." They sat across from each other while the kettle heated, the silence between them comfortable in the way it had become over weeks of shared space. Samuel poured tea when it was ready, pushing a cup toward her. "Something's bothering you," he said. It wasn't a question. Evelyn wrapped her hands around the warm cup. "Do you ever regret it? Marrying me?" Samuel's expression didn't change. "No, do you?" "I don't know." She said it honestly. "I'm grateful. For the safety, for the home, for Mila. But sometimes I wonder if I've trapped you. If you married me out of obligation, and now you're stuck with a pregnant woman you don't love and a child that isn't yours. That baby is mine now, Samuel said firmly. The moment we married, that child became mine in every way that matters. Name, protection, inheritance, everything. But you don't have to pretend it's more than it is. This is a practical arrangement. I understand that. Samuel was quiet for a long moment, his fingers wrapped around his own cup. When he spoke, his voice was careful. When Elizabeth died, I thought that part of my life was over. The part where I'd have a partner, someone to share the weight of things. I made peace with it being just me and Mila until she was grown. But then you came and... He paused, searching for words. It's different than it was with Elizabeth, but it's not less. It's just different, and I don't regret it. Even though I can't give you what a real wife would, you give me plenty. A clean house, hot meals, someone who loves my daughter, someone who works hard and doesn't complain, someone who stood in a barn with a gun to protect me when she could have run. He met her eyes. That's more than some love matches provide. Evelyn felt her throat tighten. I'm afraid, she admitted. The baby's coming in a few months, and I don't know how to be a mother. I don't know if I'm strong enough for this. You're strong enough. You've already proven that. What if something goes wrong? Women die in childbirth. What if I die and you're left with 2 children and you're not going to die? Samuel's voice was firm, almost fierce. I won't let you. We'll get the doctor here well before your time. We'll be prepared, and you're going to be fine. You can't promise that. No, but I can promise I'll do everything in my power to make it true. He reached across the table and took her hand. You're not alone in this, Evelyn. Not anymore. The touch was warm, solid, real. Evelyn held on, feeling some of her fear ease. Not disappear. Fear like hers didn't disappear, but loosen its grip slightly. Thank you, she whispered. They sat like that until their tea went cold, hands linked across the table, while outside the snow continued to fall. The winter months passed in a rhythm of work and waiting. Evelyn's belly grew round and full, making simple tasks difficult. Samuel took over the heavier chores without being asked, and Mila became her devoted helper, fetching things and talking to the baby through Evelyn's stomach with the unself-conscious sweetness of childhood. When the baby comes, can I hold it? Mila asked one February morning while they were making bread. If you're very careful, yes. I'll be so careful. I'll be the best big sister ever. Mila pressed her ear to Evelyn's belly. Can you hear me in there? I'm your sister Mila. I'm going to teach you everything. Evelyn smoothed Mila's hair, feeling a surge of affection for this child who'd adopted her so completely. The baby is lucky to have you. Are you scared about the baby coming out? Children always ask the questions adults danced around. Evelyn considered lying, then decided Mila deserved honesty. Yes, a little. Having a baby is hard work and sometimes dangerous. But you'll be okay. Papa won't let anything bad happen. The absolute faith in Samuel's ability to control outcomes made Evelyn smile despite her fear. Your papa is very strong, but some things even he can't control. Then I'll help. Mila's small face was serious. I'll help take care of you and the baby. We're a family now. Families help each other. The simple declaration nearly undid Evelyn. She pulled Mila into a hug, breathing in the scent of flower and child sweat and innocence. Yes, she said thickly. Families help each other. March brought the first hints of spring, ice melting, ground softening, the smell of wet earth. Evelyn's back ached constantly now, and she waddled more than walked. Dr. Harrison came twice to check on her, pronouncing her healthy, but warning that the baby would likely come early based on its size. First babies usually take their time, he said, packing his instruments. But not always. Be ready for anything. Samuel took the warning seriously. He made sure they had clean linens, hot water ready to be heated quickly, all the supplies the doctor recommended. He even convinced Sarah, the neighbor woman, to agree to come stay when Evelyn's time came, to help with Mila and the household. I've been through 6 births, Sarah said when she visited. You'll do fine, honey. Just remember to breathe through the pain and don't fight it. Let your body do what it knows how to do. Evelyn tried to take comfort in the advice, but as her due date approached, her anxiety grew. She dreamed of blood and screaming, of babies that wouldn't come or came wrong, of dying like her own mother had when Evelyn was 12, leaving her father alone with 3 children he didn't know how to raise. One night, a week before Dr. Harrison predicted the baby would come, Evelyn woke from one of these nightmares, gasping. She sat up in bed, her heart racing, one hand pressed to her enormous belly. A soft knock came at her door. "Evelyn? You all right?" Samuel's voice, she hadn't meant to wake him. "I'm fine, just a dream." The door opened slightly. Samuel stood silhouetted in the doorway, his hair mussed from sleep. "You don't sound fine." "I'm scared," she admitted. "What if something goes wrong? What if I'm not strong enough?" Samuel came into the room and sat carefully on the edge of her bed, maintaining respectful distance. "You're the strongest person I know. You fought 3 men with a knife. You shot at them in a barn to save me. You're going to survive childbirth. Women stronger than me have died. Not on my watch." His voice carried absolute conviction. "I lost Elizabeth because I wasn't there when she needed me most. I won't make that mistake again. You're going to get through this, and so is the baby." "You can't know that." "No, but I can believe it, and I can make you believe it too." He looked at her in the dim light. "You want to know what I see when I look at you? I see someone who refused to give up even when she had nothing. Someone who built a life out of scraps and determination. Someone who turned a house back into a home. That's not a woman who's going to die in childbirth. That's a woman who's going to fight through anything." Evelyn felt tears on her cheeks. "What if I'm not that strong? Then I'll be strong enough for both of us." He reached out and squeezed her hand. "We're in this together, remember?" She nodded, unable to speak past the lump in her throat. Samuel stood. "Try to sleep. The baby will come when it's ready, and you'll need your strength." After he left, Evelyn lay in the darkness with one hand on her belly, feeling the baby move beneath her palm. Strong kicks now, insistent. She thought about Samuel's words, about strength and fighting and refusing to give up. She'd survived everything so far. She could survive this too. The contraction started 3 days later, on a mild spring morning when the prairie was turning green. Evelyn was hanging laundry when the first pain hit, a deep, pulling ache that wrapped around her middle and took her breath away. She stood frozen, holding a wet sheet, waiting to see if it would come again. 15 minutes later, it did. "Samuel!" Her voice came out calmer than she felt. He was in the barn, close enough to hear. "Samuel, it's time!" He appeared in seconds, his face going pale beneath his tan. "You're sure?" "I'm sure." What followed was controlled chaos. Samuel sent Mila to fetch Sarah while he helped Evelyn inside. Dr. Harrison arrived within an hour, summoned by a rider Samuel had dispatched immediately. The house filled with purposeful activity, water heating, linens being laid out, Sarah taking charge of the kitchen, and Mila. The contractions grew stronger, closer together. Evelyn labored through the afternoon, gripping Samuel's hand through the worst pains while Sarah coached her breathing and Dr. Harrison monitored her progress. "You're doing fine," the doctor said after one particularly hard contraction. "Baby's positioned right. Should be straightforward, if painful." "Straightforward?" Evelyn gasped. "Easy for you to say." Samuel wiped her forehead with a cool cloth. "You're doing so well. Just keep breathing." "I hate breathing," she said through gritted teeth as another contraction built. "I hate all of this." "I know, but you're almost there." Hour after hour, the labor continued. Evelyn lost track of time, lost track of everything except the waves of pain and the voices coaching her through it. She heard Mila crying in another room, heard Sarah comforting her. She heard Samuel's voice, steady and constant, telling her she was strong, she could do this, just a little more. As the sun began to set, painting the room in gold and orange light, Dr. Harrison said, "All right, Mrs. Reed, next contraction, you push. Baby's ready to come." Evelyn bore down with everything she had, feeling like she was being split in two. The pain was enormous, overwhelming, impossible. She heard herself scream, heard Samuel's voice close to her ear saying words she couldn't understand, but that sounded like prayer or promise. "Again," Dr. Harrison commanded, "one more good push." Evelyn pushed and pushed and pushed until she thought she'd die from the effort. Then suddenly there was a release, a rush, and the thin wail of a newborn filled the room. "It's a girl," Dr. Harrison announced. "A healthy baby girl." Evelyn collapsed back, her body shaking, her mind fuzzy with exhaustion and relief. She heard the baby crying, strong and loud, heard the doctor saying something about the cord and afterbirth, but it all seemed distant and unimportant compared to that sound. Her daughter, alive and protesting. "Can I hold her?" she managed to ask. "In just a moment, let me clean her up." Samuel squeezed her hand. "You did it. You're amazing." Evelyn looked at him through tears. "Is she really okay?" "She's perfect. Listen to those lungs." Dr. Harrison brought the baby over, wrapped in a clean blanket, and placed her carefully in Evelyn's arms. She was red-faced and wrinkled, with a shock of dark hair and eyes screwed shut against the world. She was the most beautiful thing Evelyn had ever seen. "Hello," Evelyn whispered. "Hello, little one. I'm your mama." The baby quieted at her voice, and Evelyn felt something click into place in her chest. This tiny person was hers. Hers to protect, to raise, to love. All the fear and pain of the past months suddenly made sense, suddenly had purpose. "Does she have a name?" Dr. Harrison asked, making notes in his ledger. Evelyn looked at Samuel. They'd discussed this briefly, but never settled on anything definite. "What do you think?" Samuel looked at the baby with an expression Evelyn had never seen on his face before. Wonder mixed with something that looked like grief and joy combined. "Rose," he said softly, "like Elizabeth's middle name, if that's all right with you." The generosity of it, offering his first wife's name to another man's child, made Evelyn's throat close up. "Rose Reed," she said. "Yes, that's perfect." "Rose Elizabeth Reed," Samuel corrected gently. He reached out and touched the baby's tiny hand. "Welcome home, Rose." The baby's fingers closed around his, and Samuel's expression crumpled for just a moment. Then he composed himself. But Evelyn had seen it. The moment he fell in love with this child who carried no blood of his but would carry his name forever. Dr. Harrison finished his work, confirmed that Evelyn and the baby were both healthy, and left with promises to check on them in a few days. Sarah brought Mila in to meet her new sister, and the little girl's face lit up with such pure joy that even Samuel smiled. "She's so small," Mila breathed, touching Rose's hand with one careful finger. "Can she hear me?" "She can hear you," Evelyn confirmed. "Hi, Rose. I'm your big sister. I'm going to teach you everything, just like I promised. We're going to be best friends." That night, after Sarah had gone home and Mila was finally asleep, Samuel helped Evelyn settle into bed with Rose in a cradle beside her. The baby was sleeping now, her tiny chest rising and falling with peaceful breaths. "You should rest," Samuel said. "You've been through a lot." "Stay a minute?" Evelyn asked. "Please?" He pulled a chair close to the bed and sat down. They looked at the baby together in the lamplight. "Thank you," Evelyn said quietly. "For everything, for the name, for being here, for claiming her as yours." "She is mine." Samuel's voice was firm. "The moment I said I do, she became mine. That's not kindness or charity, that's fact." "Still, you didn't have to. You could have let me go, let me figure it out alone, but you didn't." "No, I didn't." He leaned back in the chair. "You know what Elizabeth said to me right before she died? I've never told anyone this, but she made me promise something." "What?" "She made me promise that if I ever got the chance to help someone the way I couldn't help her, I'd take it. She said life was too short to waste opportunities for kindness." He looked at Evelyn. "So when you showed up, beaten and scared and desperate, and I had the chance to help, I thought about that promise, and I took the chance." She sounds like she was a remarkable woman." "She was. And she'd like you, I think. She'd approve of this whole arrangement, the marriage, the baby, all of it." Evelyn felt tears prickling again. Damn pregnancy emotions. "I'm not trying to replace her." "I know, and you couldn't if you tried. But you're not a replacement. You're something different, something this house needed." He stood. "Get some sleep. Rose is going to want to eat again soon, and you need your strength." After he left, Evelyn lay in the darkness, listening to her daughter breathe. She thought about the past months, the terror, the uncertainty, the slow building of trust and partnership with a man she barely knew. She thought about Cyrus and his men, about debts that no longer mattered, about the girl she'd been when she'd stood in that collapsing farmhouse believing her life was over. That girl was gone. In her place was a woman who'd survived, who'd fought, who'd built a new life from nothing but determination and a stranger's kindness. A woman who was a wife, a mother, a member of a family she'd never imagined having. Rose made a small sound in her sleep, and Evelyn reached over to rock the cradle gently. "It's all right," she whispered. "Mama's here. You're safe." And in that moment, saying those words, Evelyn realized they were true. Not just for Rose, but for herself. She was safe. She was home. She was exactly where she was supposed to be. Spring turned to summer, and the ranch came fully alive. Evelyn recovered from the birth slowly but steadily, regaining her strength while learning to navigate motherhood. Rose was a good baby, fussy sometimes, but generally content. She had Samuel's gray eyes, Evelyn noticed as weeks passed, though everyone politely pretended not to notice the coincidence. Mila was a devoted big sister, constantly wanting to hold Rose or sing to her or help with baths. Samuel was surprisingly natural with the baby, handling her with the same calm competence he brought to everything else. He'd take Rose in the evenings, walking with her while Evelyn rested, his deep voice rumbling as he talked to her about horses and cattle and the land. One warm June evening, Marshall Webb rode out to visit. Evelyn met him on the porch, wiping her hands on her apron while Rose slept in a basket nearby. "Marshall, is something wrong?" "No, just checking in. Heard you had the baby." He looked at Rose with the awkward appreciation men showed for infants. "She's healthy?" "Very. Strong lungs." "That's good." He cleared his throat. "I also wanted you to know Cyrus Holt left Kansas Territory, headed to Colorado with his men. Got word yesterday from a friend in Dodge City. He won't be bothering you anymore." Relief washed through Evelyn, though she realized she'd already started to believe she was safe. "Thank you for letting us know." "Part of the job." Webb shifted his weight. "I also wanted to say, I judged you wrong, Mrs. Reed, when this all started. Thought you were just a woman looking for a man to take care of her. But I see now you're more than that. You're a fighter. Reed's lucky to have you." "I'm lucky to have him," Evelyn corrected. "Well, either way." He tipped his hat. "You all take care. Congratulations on the little one." After he left, Evelyn sat on the porch watching the sun set over the prairie. Samuel came out from the barn, saw her sitting there, and joined her. "Marshall Webb stopped by," she said. "Cyrus is gone. Left the territory." Samuel nodded slowly. "Good. One less thing to worry about." They sat in comfortable silence, watching the land turn gold in the evening light. Rose stirred in her basket, making small sounds. Samuel reached over and rocked it gently without being asked. "I was thinking," Evelyn said carefully, "about the ranch, about the future." "What about it?" "I want to contribute more. Not just cooking and cleaning. I want to help with the business side, the accounts, the planning. I'm good with numbers, and I want to be useful." Samuel looked at her thoughtfully. "You're already useful." "I mean really useful. As a partner, not just hired help." "Evelyn, you're my wife. Of course you're a partner. But we never talk about it like that. We never make decisions together, plan together. I want that. I want to be part of building this place, not just maintaining it." Samuel was quiet for a long moment. Then he nodded. "All right, starting tomorrow, we'll go over the books together. You can see where we stand, what needs work. We'll make decisions together." He paused. "I should have offered that sooner. You've had other things to worry about. Still, this is your home now. Your ranch, too. You should have a say in how it runs." That night, lying in bed with Rose sleeping in the cradle beside her, Evelyn thought about how far she'd come. 6 months ago, she'd been a terrified widow with nothing. Now she was a wife, a mother, a partner in a working ranch. She had a home, a family, a future. It wasn't the future she'd imagined when she'd married Thomas all those years ago. It wasn't a love story, at least not in the traditional sense, but it was good, real, built on respect and mutual need and shared responsibility. And maybe, she thought as Rose made small sleeping sounds beside her, maybe that was better than romance anyway. Maybe practical partnership that worked was worth more than passionate love that failed. The summer passed in a blur of work and growth. Rose got bigger, started smiling, started responding to voices and faces. Mila started helping more with ranch chores, taking pride in her responsibilities. Samuel built a bigger chicken coop and talked about adding more cattle next year. And slowly, almost imperceptibly, the relationship between Samuel and Evelyn shifted. It started small, hands that lingered when passing dishes at dinner, conversations that stretched later into the evening, glances that held a moment longer than necessary. Samuel started asking her opinion on more than just household matters, about which cattle to buy, about repairs to make, about plans for expansion. Evelyn found herself watching him work, admiring the strength in his shoulders, the patience he showed with Mila, the gentle way he held Rose. She noticed small kindnesses, coffee made the way she liked it, wildflowers left on the kitchen table, her favorite chair positioned where the afternoon light was best for sewing. One August evening, after the children were asleep, Samuel found Evelyn on the porch watching stars emerge. "Mind if I join you?" he asked. "It's your porch." "Our porch," he corrected, sitting beside her. They sat in comfortable silence for a while. Then Samuel said, "I've been thinking about something." "What?" "About this." He gestured between them. "About us. This arrangement we made." Evelyn's heart beat faster. "What about it?" "It's working, better than I expected, honestly. The ranch is running well. The children are happy. Everything's good." "Yes, it is. But I was wondering." He stopped, seeming to struggle for words. "I was wondering if maybe it could be more than just good. More than just an arrangement." Evelyn turned to look at him. In the starlight, his face was half-shadowed, but she could see the uncertainty there, the vulnerability. "What are you saying, Samuel?" "I'm saying that somewhere along the way, this stopped being just practical for me. I care about you, Evelyn. Not just as the mother of my children or the woman who keeps my house. As you, as the person you are." He took a breath. "I'm saying I'd like this to be a real marriage. If you want that too." Evelyn's throat tightened. "Thought you married me out of obligation." "I married you because it made sense, but I care about you because of who you are, how you love Mila, how you fought for us when you could have run, how you work harder than anyone I know, how you're strong even when you're scared." He reached over and took her hand. "I'm not asking you to love me. I know that might not happen, but I'm asking if we can try for more than just partnership, if we can try for something real." Evelyn looked down at their joined hands, his rough with work, hers scarred from her own labor. She thought about the past months, about how this quiet man had given her everything when she had nothing, how he'd claimed her daughter as his own, how he'd stood between her and violence without hesitation. She thought about how her heart had started beating faster when she heard his voice, how she looked forward to their evening conversations, how she'd started caring about his comfort, his happiness, his opinion. When had that happened? When had obligation become affection, partnership become something deeper? "I think," she said slowly, "that it's already real. I think it's been real for a while now, and we just didn't want to admit it." Samuel's expression shifted, hope lighting his features. "Yeah? Yeah." She squeezed his hand. "I care about you too, Samuel, more than I meant to, more than I thought I could after Thomas. You've given me a life, a home, a family, but more than that, you've given me respect, partnership, the feeling that I matter. That's worth more than any grand romance." "So we try? We make this a real marriage in every way?" Evelyn looked at this man who'd saved her, who'd married her, who'd become hers in ways that had nothing to do with legal papers. "Yes, we try." Samuel leaned in slowly, giving her time to pull away. When she didn't, he kissed her, soft and tentative, nothing like the brief peck at their wedding. This was a real kiss, full of question and promise. When they pulled apart, Evelyn was smiling. "Well, that's different from the first time." "Better?" "Much better." They sat on the porch until late, talking about the future, about what they wanted to build together, about how to blend what they had with what they hoped for. And when they finally went inside, Samuel walked Evelyn to her door, but didn't presume anything. "Take your time," he said. "We'll figure this out as we go. No rush." "Thank you," she said. Then, impulsively, she stretched up and kissed him again. For everything. The autumn came with harvest work and preparations for winter. The ranch thrived under their joint management. They'd bought more cattle, repaired the barn, added to the house. They worked side by side during the day and talked together in the evenings, their conversations growing deeper, more intimate. And slowly, carefully, their marriage became real in all the ways it hadn't been before. They became partners not just in business, but in life. They became companions. They became, against all odds, people who'd chosen each other for more than just survival. One October evening, Evelyn found Samuel in the barn mending a bridle. Rose was strapped to her chest in a sling, nearly 6 months old now, and getting heavier by the day. Mila was at the house preparing dinner. She'd learned enough to handle simple meals. "Can I ask you something?" Evelyn said. Samuel looked up from his work. "Always." "Do you ever wish it had been different? That we'd met some other way? Fallen in love the normal way?" He considered the question seriously. "No, I don't. Because if things had been different, you wouldn't be you, I wouldn't be me. What we have works because of how we got here, not in spite of it. But we miss so much, the courtship, the romance, all those early stages. We're building our own stages. Maybe they're out of order, but they're ours." He set down the bridle and came closer. "I wouldn't trade what we have for anything. Would you?" Evelyn looked around the barn, at the tools hanging neatly on walls, at the horses in their stalls, at the evidence of work and care, and building something that lasted. She thought about the house full of warmth and voices, about Mila reading books by the fire, about Rose growing stronger every day. "No," she said. "I wouldn't trade it." Samuel kissed her forehead, then Rose's. "Then that's all that matters." Winter came again, their first full winter as a real family. Snow fell heavy and white, isolating them on the ranch for days at a time. But inside the house, there was warmth, laughter, stories told around the fire. Mila teaching Rose how to clap her hands. Samuel and Evelyn working together over account books, planning for spring. On Christmas morning, Samuel gave Evelyn a gift. A new dress, deep blue, carefully sewn by Sarah in town. It was the first new dress Evelyn had owned in years. "I thought you deserved something that was yours," Samuel said. "Something that isn't worn or mended or hand-me-down." Evelyn held the dress against herself, feeling tears prick her eyes. "It's beautiful." "So are you." She looked at him, this man who'd become her husband in truth, not just in name. "I love you," she said. The words surprised her as much as they surprised him, but once spoken, she knew they were true. "I didn't mean to, didn't plan it, but I do." Samuel pulled her close, careful of Rose playing on the floor between them. "I love you too, have for months now, just didn't know how to say it." Mila looked up from her new doll. "Does this mean we're a real family now?" They both laughed. "We've been a real family for a while now," Samuel said. "We just finally admitted it." "Good," Mila said matter-of-factly. "I knew it all along." Spring came as it always did, turning the prairie green and filling the air with the scent of new growth. Evelyn stood in the garden, much bigger now, expanded to feed their growing family, and watched Samuel work with Mila in the corral, teaching her to handle a horse. Rose sat in a basket nearby, babbling to herself and reaching for passing butterflies. A year ago, Evelyn had been alone in a collapsing house, facing violence and despair. She'd had nothing but determination and the clothes on her back. Now she had everything. A home, a husband she loved, 2 daughters, a future that stretched out full of possibility instead of fear. It wasn't the life she'd planned. It wasn't the life she'd imagined when she'd married young and full of dreams. But it was better. It was real. It was built on hard work and mutual respect and the choice to stand together when everything else fell apart. Samuel saw her watching and waved. She waved back, then picked up Rose and carried her toward the house. Dinner needed starting. Mila would need help with her reading later. There were eggs to collect and bread to bake, and 100 small tasks that made up the fabric of daily life. But first she paused on the porch and looked out at the land, their land, stretching endlessly under a clear blue sky. She thought about the winter widow who'd had nothing and the spring wife who had everything. The difference wasn't in what she had, but in who she'd become. A fighter, a mother, a partner, a woman who'd survived and built and created something beautiful from ashes and determination. Samuel joined her on the porch, slipping an arm around her waist. "What are you thinking?" "That I'm grateful," Evelyn said, "for all of it, the hard parts and the good parts, because it brought me here, to you, to this." He kissed her temple. "We brought each other here. That's how partnerships work." Inside, they could hear Mila singing to herself while she set the table. Rose gurgled happily in Evelyn's arms. Through the window, the Kansas prairie stretched out to meet the horizon, wild and beautiful and home. "Come on," Samuel said. "Let's go inside. Our family's waiting." Our family. The words settled into Evelyn's heart like seeds finding fertile ground. She'd lost everything once, had stood in the wreckage of her old life and thought there was nothing left to build from. But she'd been wrong. From nothing, from loss, from the simple act of one man offering his name and another woman accepting it, they'd built this. A family, a home, a life. It wasn't rescued, it wasn't charity, it wasn't even romance in the traditional sense. It was choice, daily choice. The decision to stand together, to build together, to become something together that neither could have been alone. And that, Evelyn thought, as she walked into the warm house with her daughter in her arms and her husband beside her, was worth more than any fairy tale. That was real. That was lasting. That was love.